Rich dad's shocking moment, mute daughter finally speaks at park, but listen to this black man. The air was tense at Maplewood Park, a place that held too many secrets beneath its sunlit surface. Children laughed in the background, but no one noticed the pulsing intensity unfolding near the old oak tree. As a crowd gathered, whispers danced like leaves in the wind, each person leaning closer, eyes wide with disbelief. There she stood, Sophia, the mute girl who hadn't uttered a single word since that dreadful accident last summer. She looked small, fragile, hair cascading over her eyes, yet today her lips parted. Gasps erupted, then came a figure, a stranger cloaked in shadows, a tall man with piercing eyes and an unsettling calm. The crowd hushed, every breath held tight, as if they were waiting for a storm to break. This was no ordinary moment. Sophia's fingers trembled, and the something heavy hung in the air, like a storm cloud ready to unleash wrath. The man beckoned her gently, whispering words that hovered like secrets in the air. "I can't believe it," someone murmured from the back, the shock palpable in their voice. "What if she actually speaks?" The thought raced through the crowd, igniting a frenzy of curiosity. What had this man said to her? What could make a girl who suffered so deeply finally find her voice? As the seconds dragged on, you could feel the tension reach a breaking point, and everyone's eyes were glued to that fragile moment. It felt like the world itself was watching. Sophia's eyes glistened with a mix of fear and determination, and within her gaze lay all the unspoken pain of 1,000 unshed tears. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. And just as Sophia opened her mouth, the sound of a distant siren pierced the air, slicing through the tension and drawing startled breaths. In that fleeting instant, the crowd leaned forward, teetering on the edge of anticipation. Would her voice shatter the silence? Would the truth spill out like a broken dam? Or would the mystery of her silence remain unbroken, laced with the shadows of her past? The answers hung there, tantalizingly out of reach, as time stood still, promising that something life-changing was about to unfold. Just as Sophia drew a breath, a hand suddenly reached out, grabbing her wrist. It was the shadowy man, his grip like iron. He leaned closer, his voice a mere whisper but loud enough for the crowd to strain and catch every word. "Whatever you do, don't listen to them." His eyes bore into hers, a mix of urgency and unyielding support swirling within their depths. Confusion lashed over Sophia's expression. Voices from the crowd erupted into a storm of speculation. "What does he mean?" someone shouted. "Is she hearing voices?" Others murmured anxiously, their intrigue turning to unease. Sophie's pulse quickened as the reality of the moment overwhelmed her. The crowd was a living entity, breathing down her neck, waiting for something, anything that would break the silence. A drop of sweat slid down her back, trickling down to her spine. The man then released her, stepping back into the shadowy fringe of the crowd where he seemed at once a part of and separate from the chaos. Sophia's heart raced. What had he meant? Did she even want to speak? The weight of her silence loomed larger, cradling past traumas she had buried deep within. The siren's wail faded, replaced by the dissonance of whispers. Why now? After all this time? Another voice cut through the fog, a mother pleading, she needs to say something. It's about time. The pressure to perform, to fulfill expectations, swelled around her like a choking fog. But it was the man's eyes, resolute and steady, that offered her a lifeline. Then, unexpected laughter erupted nearby, wholly out of place. A boy had kicked a soccer ball, knocking a drink out of someone's hand. It seemed trivial but broke the tension, and for a moment, Sophia tore her gaze away from the man, her heart fluttering. Laughter so foreign to her in moments of despair was a reminder of life continuing despite the weight she carried. A flicker of determination ignited within her as she caught the breeze stirring the leaves above, a whispering reminder that perhaps she wasn't as alone as she thought. The crowd ebbed and flowed, but within her, a storm brewed. What if she harnessed that chaos? What if her voice could stir something, change everything? The stranger reappeared at her side, drawing in closer again, yet the intensity in his gaze was softened this time. "You're stronger than you know, Sophia. Your voice matters." His voice trembled with unspoken resolve, and in that moment, something shifted in her. She took another breath, as if she were dragging a mountain of ice from her chest. "It's time," she whispered to herself, just loud enough for the man to hear. But would the crowd hear her? Would they realize all the weight she was ready to unleash? Suddenly, the tall man placed his hand over his heart and nodded. "Just let it out." But as she opened her mouth, the ground beneath them trembled as if echoing her hesitation. A rumble grew in the distance, intensifying the urgency of the moment. Then, just as doubt began to creep back into her mind like a thief in the night, a figure appeared at the edge of the park, clothed in shadows. Another mystery emerged, an unknown observer approached, and the crowd fell silent once more in anticipation and uncertainty. What did this new arrival want? Would the unexpected competition force Sophia to stand firm in her truth, or could it send her spiraling back into silence? The clock was ticking, and the moment loomed closer. The figure at the edge of the park took a cautious step forward. A murmur rippled through the crowd, their faces turning with curiosity and hesitant concern. He was tall but not imposing, his skin a deep shade of mahogany that contrasted sharply with the bright light of the day. He wore a faded t-shirt and jeans, but it was the intensity in his eyes that captured Sophia's attention. Those eyes seemed to see through the chaos, piercing the veil of her fears like a needle through fabric. "Who are you?" someone shouted from the crowd, their voice laced with both challenge and intrigue. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he focused on Sophia, and for the first time, she felt the world shift in its axis. A quiet determination radiated from him, mingling with the crowd's anxiety. It felt as if time had slowed, seconds stretching into an eternity, leaving only them in that suspended moment. She stood on the precipice of a revelation, but the roar of doubts threatened to drown out any courage she could muster. The whispers returned, becoming a cacophony that clawed at the edges of her resolve. "What if I fail?" The thought screamed within her, then she remembered the stranger's words, the promise of strength she had felt reflected in his eyes. She inhaled deeply, a breath drawing strength from invisible fibers woven between her and him. "I'm here to listen," the stranger finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "What do you have to say?" The crowd seemed to lean in, their collective breath held with bated anticipation. This was not just about Sophia anymore, it was about the journey of voices long silenced, the wounds that had festered in the quiet spaces of their hearts. But as she opened her mouth, ready to untangle the knot of her fears, shadows shifted in the crowd. The man who had first spoken to her suddenly emerged again, his brow creased with worry. "No," he began, but the words were swallowed by a deeper rumble that rolled across the park, reverberating like an ominous drumbeat. The ground shook again, this time harder. Gasps erupted, feet shuffled back as people began to panic. "Get down!" someone yelled, while others simply stood frozen, eyes wide, hearts racing against the invisible clock ticking louder with each passing moment. Sophia's breath caught as the new arrival shifted, expression unreadable, while the elusive man flashed her a warning glance. The air thrummed with uncertainty as if the world itself was holding its breath just like her. "Is it an earthquake?" A voice trembled, panic creeping into the summer air. Fragments of conversations flickered around them. "Someone call for help." The crowd surged, instinctively moving away from the source of fear. But Sophia stood her ground. Her heart was thudding, but it was no longer just fear. Something powerful was awakening inside her. The shadowy man stepped closer again, urgency etched on his face. "This isn't just about you. They need to hear you." Her lips parted, an instinctive pull urging her to speak. She could be the beacon they all needed, but then, something in the shadows caught her eye. The dark figure had shifted closer, more defined now, and just as the tremor subsided, an even louder echo burst forth, a voice. Filled with power and authority, it struck like lightning. Enough. This ends now. The crowd turned, confusion fracturing the air, and Sophia found her heart racing in a different rhythm, the urgency of the moment threatening to sweep her away. What would she do now? Would she answer the call, or would she let fear claim her voice again? In that charged moment, the city around them felt like a whirlpool, ready to drag her down into silence once more. But the unseen voice called, and it carried an underlying promise. What truth would be unveiled next? The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting from the dark figure to the stranger standing before Sophia. The tension was palpable, a tight wire ready to snap. Her heart raced as an unshakable instinct stirred within her. This was her moment. She could feel the weight of countless unspoken words pressing against her chest. The man in the shadows stepped forward, his voice echoing like thunder. You think this ends? You think you can silence what has been buried for too long? His gaze swept through the crowd like a storm, a fiery determination sparking among those trapped in their own fears. Sophia's breath quickened, confusion and dread mixing in her stomach as the earth beneath her felt unsteady. The stranger beside her placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her. You are not alone. Speak. His voice penetrated the chaos, a tether pulling her back to herself. I need to, she whispered, her voice trembling but growing steadier. I have to say what has been trapped inside. It was like a dam bursting, the emotions flooding her thoughts: pain, loss, regret, hope. Then do it. Shouted a woman in the crowd, breaking the spell that had woven around them. The crowd murmured like a restless sea, the anticipation crackling in the air. The moment hung, heavy and electric. Sophia looked into the stranger's eyes, their depth revealing a flicker of reassurance. Does anyone here remember? She began, her voice gaining strength. The first time you felt your voice was stolen? The first time you were afraid to speak up? A ripple of recognition washed over her audience. Their unity became a palpable force, a shared heartbeat vibrating through the park. It was every moment when someone decided what we should feel, think, say, every time fear shadowed our lives, holding us back. But today, we can change that. Sophia's voice rang out, fierce and clear, breaking the barriers of fear that had latched onto them for too long. The stranger nodded, his eyes gleaming with pride. This isn't just your truth, Sophia. It's ours. Then, just as the energy surged, a blinding flash cut through the atmosphere. A figure loomed larger at the back of the crowd, barely visible. It wore a dark cloak, the hood pulled up, casting a deep shadow over its face. The crack of thunder echoed in the distance, a storm brewing somewhere unseen. Enough of this farce. The cloaked figure boomed, cutting through Sophia's growing confidence like a knife. You think your words can change anything? I will show you what happens when you defy. Gasps erupted, panic rippling again through the crowd as they instinctively stepped back, creating a widening circle around the dark presence. Sophia's heart raced faster, the fear creeping back, but she remembered the kind stranger's promise of strength. Don't listen to him. She shouted, raising her voice above the rising storm. We have the power. We can't let fear continue to mute us. Around her, the crowd hesitated, the tension balancing on a knife's edge of hope and dread. He would not silence them. But then, the figure raised a gloved hand and made a swift, fluid motion. The ground quaked violently, and fear erupted anew as chaos unfurled. Sophia felt the air shift, a dark force threatening to consume them all. Would she rise above the shadows surrounding her, or would they swallow her voice whole? As the crowd tensed, poised at the brink of either bravery or chaos, the moment crystallized. What had she truly awakened within herself, and would it be enough to confront this looming darkness? Sophia felt the trembling ground beneath her, the reality of the chaos unfolding around her piercing through her bravado like cold steel. Thunder rolled ominously overhead, each peal amplifying the dread that crackled through the crowd. A few people stumbled backward, caught in the panic, their faces twisted in fear as they darted toward the edges of the encroaching darkness, but not everyone was fleeing. Amid the tumult, she felt the man's hand still resting on her shoulder, steady and warm. His presence wrapped around her like a lifeline, giving her the courage to hold her ground. "I won't let him scare us," she murmured under her breath, the words arriving with a newfound clarity. "We believe in our voices." Raising her chin high, she lifted her gaze to meet the cloaked figure's shadowed eyes. "You might think you can intimidate us into silence," she challenged, her voice wavering but fierce, "but we are stronger than our fears. We are not alone." Silence washed over the park, a tension-filled pause where every heartbeat echoed uniquely in the anticipation. The dark figure's lips curled into a mocking smile, and it took a step across the threshold of the gathered crowd as if stepping onto a stage. The sound of his footsteps resonated, a taunting metronome to the rising heartbeat of those facing him. "You think your unity," he spat, venom lacing his words, "will protect you from the forces that seek to keep you muted? There are shadows far darker than mere voices across this land." The crowd reacted, a wave of whispers cascading amongst them, casting glances back and forth. People were torn between disbelief and the allure of fear. Could this figure actually have power? "Who are you?" A defiant voice rang out from somewhere behind Sophia. The boldness echoed in the charged air, cutting through the darkness. "What do you want from us?" For a fleeting moment, the cloaked one froze, the question hanging in the charged atmosphere like a lightning bolt poised to strike. His eyes narrowed as he turned toward the speaker, and the storm began to swirl ominously, shadows pulsating and thickening around him. "No one needs to know my name," he replied coolly. "What matters is the truth I have to offer, a truth you're too timid to confront. This illusion of power rests on shaky ground. I've shadowed your fears, and they have become my strength." Sophia's heart raced as she processed his words. Suddenly, they felt like truth creeping in. The murmur in the crowd grew louder, people facing the shadows they had ignored for too long. Every glance felt like an admission of guilt. Maybe this was more than mere theatrics. "What will you do?" she shouted back, fierce determination igniting in her chest. "You think you can instill fear? We will face that fear together." In that moment, the ground shook once more, this time more violently than before, echoing the turmoil within the crowd. "You desire change," the figure sneered, "but change demands sacrifice, and the cost might be more than you can endure." Sophia felt the fear surge through her, but she couldn't back down now. Every instinct told her that her fight was just beginning. The stranger next to her gripped her shoulder tighter. "Together, we can face the shadows, Sophia. Together, our voices can unite." The power of his words mingled with the storm raging overhead and pulse of anticipation in the crowd. The strangers' faces turned toward her, hope and dread mixed in their expressions. They were ready to join her. "I refuse to stand in silence," Sophia cried, her voice a declaration against the growing shadows. "We will speak our truths, and our unity will amplify us." As her words thundered through the park, the figure in black took a step back, caught off guard by the rally around her. But before she could savor the shift in momentum, the ominous clouds overhead darkened further. "What happens next, Sophia?" The cloaked figure hissed, anger lurking beneath the facade of unexpected hesitation. "Your words carry weight, but can they carry you? When I summon what lies beneath, can you withstand the fallout?" A shiver ran down her spine, and she could only imagine the shadows lurking within the storm that brewed. Would her words hold power against the decaying darkness rising to swallow them whole? As the crowd drew closer around her, a sense of impending doom crackled in the air. Sophia could not look away from the shadow before her. Could she truly awaken the power within? Or would the cost of their truth drive them apart? The air thickened, pressed against Sophia's lungs, as the cloaked figure's laughter echoed through the park. It was a sound that sliced through the tension, almost mocking her resolve. His presence loomed, dark and forbidding, ready to unleash whatever horror he claimed resided in the depths. She clutched the stranger's hand tighter, her knuckles white with anxiety yet bolstered by their shared determination. "Stand firm!" she yelled into the crowd, seeking to snatch back their fragile confidence. "We are not weak. Our voices carry more weight than any shadow." Another tremor coursed through the ground, splitting apart the cobblestones like cracks in an old painting. A few nearby people fell to their knees, grasping the earth as if it might swallow them whole. The wind howled, clashing against the towering trees that swayed uneasily, their limbs stretching as if trying to flee the chaos unfolding. "Your cries mean nothing without action." The figure barked, lifting his hands slowly above his head. With every lift, shadows surged at his command, wrapping around his outstretched fingers as if they were alive. They twisted and twisted into form, elongating into grotesque shapes that danced with menace. Sophia's heart fluttered wildly. A knot of terror lodged itself in her throat as the crowd gasped, fear rippling through those around her. The figures emerged from the darkness like nightmares pulled into the light, each one worse than the last. Gnarled mouths opened, letting out a cacophony of anguished wails that seemed to weave a spell of dread over the gathering. "Do you see the truth?" he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "These specters are your fears made flesh. They embody your secrets, your regrets, your crushed dreams. They shall be the price for your boldness." Then it happened. The shadows began to detach from him, surging forward toward the crowd. Panic erupted. People stumbled back, screams piercing the air as instinctively, their fear propelled them away from the horror charging at them. Sophia felt her heart lurch at the sight, a visceral wave of dread pouring over her. But she stood her ground. "No! Stop!" she shouted, her voice fierce and cutting through the frantic chaos. She felt the man's hand beside her tighten, as if sensing her resolve waning. They were losing control, and the darkness threatened to swallow them all. "We will not be silenced," she affirmed, her voice trembling yet steadying. "We embrace our fears. We will face the truth." The cloaked figure faltered briefly, confusion flickering across his face as the advancing shadows hesitated. Something shifted in the space between them. The crowd paused, faces alight with both fear and fury. They turned back to Sophia, eyes glistening with challenge, like a dormant fire stoked anew. "Together!" someone shouted from the rear. "Together, we fight back." That single word sent a surge of electricity racing through the assembly. The crowd began to hum, a low, thrumming sound, rising in defiance. It swirled around Sophia as she focused on uniting their strength, urging their hidden bravery to blossom. As they began chanting, echoing her resolute words, the shadows quivered. Though twisted and wailing, they shrank back, absorbing the light of the crowd's unity. But the cloaked figure's smile returned, this time a grimace that hinted at something darker. "Your voices might hold power, but how much of it can you bear? What happens when the truth demands more than just words? Are you willing to bleed, to scream?" The storm above roared in response, sending buckets of rain crashing down on the assembly, drowning out their voices. The shadows writhed, bending back toward their master, still keeping their eyes gluttonously peeled on the crowd. What would the dark figure unleash in retaliation? And would they rise above it, or fall prey to the very fears they sought to confront? The moment lay heavy in the air, often teetering between hope and dread, awakening what lay dormant has awakened. As the wind howled, Sophia stood defiantly among them, trembling but alive. Would belief alone be enough to shatter the darkness, or would they all find themselves swallowed whole by its relentless hunger for despair? The answer loomed, dangerously close. The rain fell in torrents, drenching the crowd and blurring the faces of those around Sophia. Each droplet felt like a reminder of their vulnerability, each gust of wind a taunt from the cloaked figure. But beneath the onslaught, determination flickered in her chest like a match struggling against the wind. "Focus. Don't let them break you," she urged, her voice rising above the howling storm. The chanting grew louder, the melody ragged yet fierce. It was a song of defiance. People stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts beating like war drums beneath their soaked shirts. As they lifted their gazes to the grotesque figures ahead, Sophia could see more than fear. She saw glimmers of fire, the cloaked figure's eyes narrowed, his own power trembled against the energy swelling in the air like a rising tide. "Do you really think this trifling effort can save you?" he taunted, his laugh splintering the sound of the crowd's chant. "You've only awakened what's far worse." Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward with a speed that left no time for doubt. People screamed, a chorus of panic filled the chilled air, splintering the solidarity that had begun to form. Sophia felt her heart drop, the raw panic gripping her throat. In the chaos, she caught sight of the stranger beside her, a flicker of resolve in his eyes, mirroring her own. "Trust yourselves. Trust each other," she shouted, pushing through the rising tide of despair. Desperation spilled within her veins. This was more than just a battle of voices, it was a confrontation of the soul. Every person around her needed to find the courage within. As the figures breached the front line, dark claws reaching for their minds, one woman stepped forward with a fierce glint in her eye. "We belong to the light. These shadows will not control us," she roared, her voice amplified by the weight of the moment. The crowd reacted, it stirred, movement spreading like wildfire, a collective refusal to be consumed. Sophia could feel it then, an electric surge illuminating her core. They were not alone. They were warriors against the darkness. And then it happened. One by one, the figures flickered, their screams transforming into anguished howls that filled the air as they began to evaporate. The crowd found their voices, a layered chorus harmonizing hope and defiance. Yet in the midst of it all, Sophia couldn't shake the tightening in her chest. A terrible truth throbbed just beneath the surface. Without warning, the rafters of the sky cracked, revealing fleeting glimpses of a vibrant light. The dark figure recoiled, shadows lashing out behind him wildly. This isn't over." He spat, voice shrill with rage. He leaned in, a sinister smile threatening to carve deeper lines on his face. "You may have tasted victory, but remember, dear Confederates, the deeper the shadows, the brighter the pain that follows. You will regret this day." With a flick of his wrist, the remaining shadows surged backward into the depths of night, dragging many of the crowd's darkness with them. But as quickly as they left, a chilling silence enveloped the park, strangling the thrill of their recent victory. "What was that?" someone murmured, confusion rippling through the crowd. Sophia spun, searching the faces around her, relief intermingled with apprehension. What had they let slip back into darkness? And more importantly, what would come to reclaim it? The quietude felt heavy, pregnant with unsaid horrors. "Stand strong," she cried out, but the uncertainty weighed on her heart like an anchor. Beneath the unsettling stillness, a question gnawed at her mind: was this merely a brief reprieve, or had they unwittingly set the stage for something much more sinister? The atmosphere thickened, the air pulsating with an unresolved tension. As she searched for answers in the eyes of those around her, one thought anchored her: that whatever came next, they would have to face it together. But what awaited them beyond the shadows' retreat? Would the cost of facing their fears be more than they ever imagined? As the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, droplets clung to the leaves, glistening like beads of deception. The air was thick, not just from the remnants of the storm but from an underlying dread that rolled through the crowd. Sophia scanned the faces around her, searching for reassurance in shared fear. Their glimmers of fire had dimmed, replaced by uncertainty. "What do we do now?" someone beside her asked, voice trembling. The stranger, who had shown resolve moments before, now looked vulnerable, the weight of their collective fear pressing down on each of them. Sophia swallowed hard. "We do what we came here to do. We fight." But even as she said it, doubt crept into her heart. How could they stand against something that lurked just beyond the veil of this uneasy silence? A chilling wind whispered through the park, cutting through the fleeting warmth that remained. It curled around her like an invisible predator, and for a moment, she thought she could hear distant laughter, hollow and mocking. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught movement. A shadow shifted at the edge of the trees, just beyond the park's lamplight. Her instincts kicked in, heart racing. "Did you see that?" she whispered, though she didn't need to say it, everyone felt it. The crowd murmured nervously, heads turning toward the darkened woods. The feeling of impending dread intensified. Shadows twisted and danced, merging together in a grotesque display. Sophia's stomach knotted as panic threatened to bubble up again. "Stay together," she urged, gripping the stranger's arm, pulling him closer. A figure stepped from between the trees, its form too elongated, too twisted to be human. It stood still for a moment, surveying the crowd with malevolent eyes that gleamed with otherworldly light. That laughter, again infectious and wicked, echoed in her ears. It was the same laughter from before, the taunt of the cloaked figure that had come to life. "What do you want?" Sophia shouted, her voice shaking but defiant. She could barely recognize it, almost drowned in fear but refusing to back down. The figure smirked, slow and languid, as if it relished every moment of her fear. "You think you've won? Your light is but a flicker in the abyss. It's cute. But it won't hold back what is coming." The crowd gasped, collective breath held tight. No one moved. It was as if even the air around them waited for her response. "Who are you?" Sophia pressed, her grip on the stranger tightening. What was it about the darkness that felt so personal? It clawed at her, whispered doubts and accusations she had tried to bury. "I am the shadow that lurks beneath your light," it hissed, voice soft yet sharp like daggered whispers. "And soon, I will own you all." A chill raced through the crowd, echoing off the trees, and Sophia felt the prickle of fear wash over her. She stepped forward, pushing through the thickness of dread. "You won't take us. We stand together no matter how deep the shadows cut." The figure laughed, an unsettling sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Together, but for how long? Can you withstand the truth?" Before she could respond, the ground trembled beneath her feet, and the shadows crept closer. Sophia stumbled backward, the realization hitting her like a fist to the gut. What truth awaited them? What secrets lay hidden behind that laughter? The uncertainty felt achingly palpable as the darkness curled around, and she knew this didn't end here. Not with a warning like that. "Look!" someone screamed, pointing toward the horizon. A sliver of ominous light broke through the clouds, pulling her attention like a magnet. Its radiance flickered before dimming, sparking unease. With dread pooling in her gut, Sophia faced the crowd and shouted, setting a tone of fierce determination that momentarily halted their sinking spirits. "We have to find out what this means. We cannot ignore it. Not now." But a sense of dread sat heavy between them. Shadows roamed even closer, lurking and whispering, and as they began to swirl into a choking fog, one name echoed inside her mind, freezing her to the core. Was it a name, or was it something far worse that she had to confront? The darkness wasn't finished with them yet. The real fight was just beginning. What had stayed hidden was about to be revealed, and it promised to shake everything they knew to its core. Would they be ready for it? Sophia could only pray that they would be. As whispers of the past seemed to harden like ice in her veins, she felt eyes upon her. And suddenly, she realized, the true battle wasn't only outside, it was brewing deep within. How far would she have to go to keep the light alive? The light flickered again, but this time, it surged brighter, gaining a pulse that confused the shadows creeping ever closer. Sophia could feel her heart quicken, it was like the dawn fighting against the relentless night. She squared her shoulders, her breath catching as she caught sight of the figure's sneer. "What do you want from us?" she called, her voice breaking slightly. The strange being unfolded its limbs, each movement deliberate and fluid, and the crowd gasped collectively, fear palpable in the air. The figure opened its jaws wide, as if to consume their very will, and the lingering laughter echoed anew. "I come to collect your fears, your secrets," it hissed, leaning in closer, "and the truth is a taste not easily forgotten." Sophia felt a drop of ice trickle down her spine. The shadows around her surged forward, swirling with intent, feeding on her anxiety. It was as if the very fabric of the world was pulling apart, revealing gaping chasms of despair beneath. She looked around, seeing faces twisted in horror, helpless against the dread that gripped them. "Stay strong," she shouted, gripping the stranger's arm tighter. "Fight it. Fight back." She met their eyes, searching for a flicker of courage. But doubt clawed at her. Could these people truly stand against this? A woman next to her, tears glistening in her eyes, stared back. "What if we can't? What if we're not strong enough?" Her voice trembled, slicing through the tension like a blade. The crowd began to murmur, and panic bubbled beneath the surface. "No!" Sophia yelled, desperation tinging her voice. "Together, we're stronger." But even she felt like a lone lighthouse in a storm, flickering dimly against overwhelming darkness. Suddenly, the tension snapped like a taut wire, and the shadows lunged forward, thick and oppressive. The crowd screamed, some stumbled back, while others clutched each other for support. The laughter turned into a deafening roar that drowned all sense of hope. "Moral courage, my dear Sophia," the figure taunted, its voice curling around her like smoke. "You stand here, glorious in your light, but light cannot exist without darkness. And your light is fading." Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she saw something flicker behind the figure, a fleeting glimpse of what lay beyond the shadows. She could see despair personified, a figure clad in sorrow, watching with empty eyes. It struck a chord in her heart, igniting a fire of resolve. "You may take our fear," she declared, steeling herself, "but you cannot take our hope." In that moment, an unseen force surged through the crowd. Light began to flicker and spark among the gathering, igniting a swarm of flickering flames as small torches sprang to life. The warmth pulsed, fighting against the cold grasp of darkness. Yet, even as the light grew stronger, the figure smirked. "But can you endure the weight of your truths? Can you face what lies within?" The atmosphere shifted abruptly, as the warm flashes of clarity began to reveal faces, each holding their own secrets. The stranger next to Sophia was shaking, a million unspoken truths unfolding in his eyes. She could almost hear the whispers of their pasts, the fears they buried along the way, painful memories clawing their way to the surface. "Wisdom lies in acceptance," the figure hissed again, shadows creeping ever closer, trying to snuff out those newfound flames. "Shall we see how many can truly bear their burdens?" A jolt of protest rose within Sophia. "Do not give in. We are more than our fears." As the darkness began to swallow the courage flickering among them, her heart raced. The laughter turned from mocking to menacing, the figure gesturing as if it could shred the light to pieces. "Face your truths or succumb to the shadows." And in that moment, with shadows closing in, a deep voice broke through the chaos. "What if confronting the truth means losing everything?" Sophia turned, eyes wide, meeting the gaze of a man from the back of the crowd. The tension in the air crackled, each heartbeat booming louder as they tried to decipher what such a revelation would cost them. Each flicker of light seemed to shrink back at the weight of that question. Was confronting their truths worth the potential devastation? Would they even survive the aftermath? Heart racing, Sophia knew she had to respond. Her voice must rise above the panic before the shadows stole more than just their light. Would she be able to inspire courage, or would the weight of their fears crush them completely? As uncertainty clouded the air, she felt a fierce resolve take hold of her. They were at the edge of choice, teetering between the darkness that sought to consume them and the light they desperately clung to. But the shadows churned with urgency, threatening to engulf them all, and the figure's laughter echoed ominously once more. What truth awaited them if they dared to look deeper? A single question lingered painfully in the air: would they find the courage to face their truths before it was too late? Or would they allow the shadows to dictate their fate? The air around them thickened, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears and hard choices. The shadows tightened their grip, and the laughter of the figure echoed like a harbinger of doom. But something stirred within Sophia. The fear, a cold claw around her heart, mingled with a fiery spark of defiance. Together. She shouted, the words surging from her like a tidal wave. We can face the truth. Her heart raced, each beat echoing in her chest like war drums ready for battle. She turned to the crowd, their faces a tapestry of fear and resoluteness, urging them with her eyes. We are stronger than we know. A flicker of recognition passed between them as if her words ignited a flame in their chests. One by one, they stepped closer, hands reaching towards one another, forging a chain of humanity against the gathering dark. The warmth from their shared light pressed against the chilling shadows that sought to envelop them. Stand firm! Shouted the stranger beside her, his voice slicing through the murmurs of doubt like a sharp knife. This fight isn't just for us, it's for every voice that has ever been silenced. The crowd rallied. With newfound unity, they began chanting, their voices blending into a powerful anthem against despair, a crescendo that vibrated through the trembling earth. We are here. We are here. The chant swelled, filling every crevice of fear, turning each whisper of doubt into a visible force. Sophia felt the energy pulse, weaving through the crowd. It felt electric. It was like fuel, burning away layers of past trauma, revealing the raw truths that each of them held hidden inside. And then, in that timeless moment, the cloaked figure paused. Confusion flickered through his eyes, a shadow of uncertainty against his dark facade. What are you doing? He spat, the confidence in his voice wavering as the chant grew louder. With the surge of collective voices, the shadows began to unravel. The grotesque figures that had haunted the park now writhed against the piercing light emanating from the crowd. It was as if the truth combined with hope formed an indomitable shield. Sophia stepped forward, eyes locked with the figure. We will not fear what you try to instill in us. We embrace our pain, our truth. It's part of who we are. It does not define us, it strengthens us. Her words resonated and echoed among her comrades, an uprising fueled by vulnerability and strength. The laughter that had once echoed malignantly transformed into a low, rumbling growl. The figure reeled back, shadows recoiling like a wounded animal. You think this is victory? You think you're free? The figure's face twisted in disgust. You have only scratched the surface of what lurks inside. This is just the beginning. But with each declaration of truth from the crowd, the shadows shrank further, dimming under the light of unwelcome revelation. Sophia felt the tide turning. This is our moment. We want to let go of our light. She shouted, her voice rising with passion as the crowd echoed her mantra. With one last surge, the chant exploded. A torrent of energy swirled through them, their collective voice displayed like a shield made of hope. The dark figure shrieked, a final protest, as the shadows dissolved into wisps of smoke, fleeing from the powerful light that now pulsed loudly around Sophia and those gathered. But even in their victory, a chill still clung to the atmosphere, a reminder that darkness would always linger just beyond the horizon. They had tasted what it means to unite against fear, and the whispering shadows would always try to return. I'm here, the stranger spoke softly beside her, a gentle assurance in the chaos of emotions. We've faced the shadows, and we've emerged stronger. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning of our journey. Sophia nodded, feeling the weight of shared burdens lifting. They stood together, not as individuals but as a collective, a vibrant community tethered by courage and truth. It wasn't just about her voice anymore, it was about all of their voices rising, ready to confront whatever shadows might dare come next. The park felt different now, a space imbued with potential, bursting with life. As they embraced their fears and shared their truths, it ignited a unity that transcended even the darkest of trials. They had proven their strength. Even the darkest figure faded before the brightness of resilience and hope, but deep down in her heart, Sophia knew the battle was ongoing. Truths weren't simply known, they had to be continuously embraced. She looked around at the faces of her newfound friends, taking in the shared vulnerability that turned into connection, determination, and something greater than fear. Let us keep fighting, Sophia said, voice soft yet fierce. Together, we can face whatever comes next. And as the sun began to sink, casting a golden light around them, it carried the promise of hope, symbolizing brighter days ahead. There was peace in their togetherness, but it would take vigilance and continued courage to maintain the light they had uncovered. They were ready. They stepped forward into the unknown future, a collective heart beating with possibility. Now, it's your turn to shine a light on this moment. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next amazing stories coming your way. Smash the like button now to show your support and help feed the algorithm. And make sure to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how you felt during this epic conclusion. This is your moment to share. Don't wait even one more second to tell at least 5 friends about this incredible journey. Let us spread the light together.